Book 9. Odysseus reveals himself and begins his story, the Cicons, the Lotus Eaters, and the Cyclopes. Odysseus replied,
King Alcinous, it's truly wonderful to hear a bard with a voice like a god. There's nothing better or more delightful than when everyone celebrates together. Guests sit in order listening to the songs. Tables are piled high with bread and meat, and wine pourers keep everyone's cups full. This is the most beautiful sight a person can witness. But now you want to hear my sad story. You want me to relive those painful memories. I don't even know where to begin or how to continue, because the gods have weighed so heavily on me. First, I'll tell you my name. That way, you'll know it, and perhaps one day, if I survive this time of sorrow, you might become my guests, even though I live so far away. I am Odysseus, son of Laertes. I am known throughout the human world for my wisdom and cunning, and my fame reaches the heavens. I live on the island of Ithaca. There's a tall mountain there, Mount Neriton, covered in thick forests. Nearby are several other islands, close to each other, Dulichium, Same, and the wooded island of Zacynthus. Ithaca rises highest on the western horizon, where the sun sets, while the other islands lie to the east. It's a wild and rugged island, but it raises brave men. To my eyes, no other home is more beautiful. The goddess Calypso held me captive in her cave, wanting to marry me. The cunning goddess Circe of Aa tried the same, but neither could persuade me. Nothing is more precious to a person than their homeland and their family. Even the grandest home in a foreign land means nothing if it's far from your parents. Now, I will tell you about the many perilous adventures I faced on my journey home from Troy, all by the will of Zeus. After we set sail from Troy, the winds first carried us to Ismarus, the city of the Cicons. There I sacked the town and slaughtered its inhabitants. We took their wives and a great deal of treasure, which we divided fairly among us so no one could complain. I told my men we should leave immediately, but they foolishly refused to listen. They stayed on the beach, drinking wine and slaughtering countless sheep and cattle. Meanwhile, the Cicons called for help from other Cicons living inland. These new allies were more numerous, stronger, and skilled in warfare. They could fight from chariots or on foot, depending on the situation. So, the next morning, they swarmed like leaves and flowers in summer. The gods turned against us, and we found ourselves in deep trouble. They formed their battle lines near our ships, and both armies clashed with bronze-tipped spears. As the morning wore on, we held our ground, even though they outnumbered us. But as the sun set, when men unyoked their oxen, the Cicons overwhelmed us. We lost 6 men from each of our ships. In the end, only the survivors managed to escape. From there, we continued our voyage, our hearts heavy with grief, but grateful to have escaped death, despite losing our comrades. We didn't leave until we had called out the name of each fallen comrade 3 times, mourning those who perished at the hands of the Cicons. Then, Zeus unleashed a furious north wind, stirring up a hurricane. The land and sky vanished behind thick clouds, and night seemed to burst from the sky. We let our ships be driven by the gale, but the wind's force shredded our sails to ribbons. To avoid shipwreck, we lowered the sails and rowed with all our might towards land. We spent 2 days and 2 nights there, suffering from exhaustion and despair. But on the morning of the 3rd day, we raised our masts again, hoisted our sails, and took our places, letting the wind and the helmsman guide our ship. I would have reached home safely then, if the north wind and the currents hadn't hindered me as I was rounding Cape Malea. Instead, they blew me off course near the island of Cythera. From there, fierce winds drove me across the sea for 9 days. On the 10th day, we reached the land of the Lotus Eaters, who eat a fruit from a flower that resembles a lotus. We landed to get fresh water, and our crew ate their lunch on the beach near the ships. After they had eaten and drunk, I sent 2 of my men with a 3rd soldier under them to find out what kind of people lived there. They set off at once and walked among the Lotus Eaters. The Lotus Eaters did them no harm, but offered them lotus fruit. The fruit was so delicious that anyone who ate it forgot all about their homeland. They didn't even want to return and tell us what happened. They just wanted to stay with the Lotus Eaters, munching on the fruit, forgetting all about going home. But even though they cried bitterly, I dragged them back to the ships and tied them securely under the benches. Then I ordered the rest of the crew to board the ships immediately, fearing that if any of them tasted the lotus, they too would lose their desire to return home. So they took their places and struck the gray sea with their oars. Leaving there, we continued our journey, always in great hardship. Finally, we reached the land of the lawless and heartless Cyclopes. The Cyclopes don't plant or plow. They rely on nature's bounty, eating wheat, barley, and grapes that grow wild without any farming. Their wild grapes ripen into wine, thanks to the sun and rain. They have no laws and no public gatherings. They live in caves high up on mountain peaks. Each one is the lord and master of his own family, and they don't care about their neighbors at all. Near the Cyclopes harbor lies a wooded, fertile island. It's not right next to their land, but it's not far either. This island teems with wild goats. They breed in huge numbers and are never bothered by humans. Hunters, who usually brave forests and steep mountains, don't go there. It's never plowed or grazed. It remains a wild, uncultivated land, year after year, and no other living creature lives there, only goats. The Cyclopes have no ships, and no shipbuilders to make them. So they can't travel from city to city or sail across the sea to other lands, like people with ships can. If they had ships, they would have settled this island. It's so fertile and would provide everything they need in its season. There are meadows that stretch right down to the seashore in some places, well-watered and full of lush grass. Grapes would grow wonderfully there. There's flat land perfect for plowing, with deep soil that would always yield a rich harvest. There's an excellent harbor where you don't need ropes or anchors. You don't even need to moor your ship. You just beach your vessel and stay until a favorable wind blows for sailing out again. At the back of the harbor, a clear spring flows from a cave, surrounded by thick poplar trees. We entered that harbor, but the night was so dark, it felt as if a god guided us. We couldn't see a thing. A thick mist enveloped our ships. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds, so no one could have spotted the island even if they tried. We didn't hear any waves breaking to warn us we were near shore. Suddenly, we were just there on land. As soon as we beached our ships, we lowered our sails, went ashore, and camped on the beach until daybreak.
When rosy-fingered dawn appeared, we admired the island and explored every part of it. The nymphs, daughters of Zeus, stirred up the wild goats so we could get meat for our supper. We brought our spears, bows, and arrows from the ships, then divided into 3 groups and began hunting the goats. Heaven blessed us with excellent hunting. I had 12 ships. Each ship caught 9 goats, and my own ship caught 10. All day long, until sunset, we ate and drank our fill. We had plenty of wine left, because each of us had taken many jars when we plundered the city of the Cycons, and it hadn't run out yet. While we were feasting, we kept watching the land of the Cyclopes, which was nearby. We saw the smoke from their fires. We almost imagined we heard their voices and the bleating of their sheep and goats. But when the sun set and darkness fell, we camped on the beach. The next morning, I called a meeting.
I said, "Stay here, my brave fellows, all the rest of you. I will take my ship and explore this land myself. I want to see if they are uncivilized savages or a welcoming and civilized people."
I boarded my ship, ordering my men to board and untie the ropes. They took their places and struck the gray sea with their oars. We soon reached the land, which wasn't far. There, on the face of a cliff near the sea, we saw a huge cave, draped with laurel leaves. It was a home for countless sheep and goats. There was a large yard outside, surrounded by a high wall built from stones, pine trees, and oak trees. This was the home of a giant monster who was away, tending his flocks. He didn't associate with others. He lived alone, like an outlaw. He was a terrifying creature. He wasn't like a human at all, but more like a jagged rock cliff, towering against the sky on a high mountain peak. I told my men to pull the ship ashore and stay put. Only the 12 bravest men would come with me. I also took a goatskin filled with sweet, dark wine. It was a gift from Marin, son of Euanthes, who was a priest of Apollo, the patron god of Ismarus. Marin lived within the temple's wooded grounds. When we were plundering the city, we respected him and spared his life, along with his wife and child. So he gave me incredibly valuable gifts: 7 talents of pure gold, a silver bowl, and 12 jars of sweet, unblended wine. Its flavor was absolutely divine. No one in his household, not a servant or maid, knew about this wine. Only Marin himself, his wife, and one housekeeper knew. When he drank it, he mixed 1 part wine with 20 parts water. Yet, the aroma from the mixing bowl was so enchanting, it was impossible not to drink it. I filled a large goat skin with this wine and took a bag full of provisions. I had a bad feeling that I might encounter a savage, someone incredibly strong who respected neither justice nor law. We soon reached his cave. He was out shepherding his flocks, so we went inside and examined everything we saw. His cheese racks were piled high with cheeses, and he had more lambs and kids than his pens could hold. They were separated into different groups. First the young lambs, then the older ones, and finally the tiny newborns, all kept apart. In his dairy, all the bowls, pitchers, and milk pails he used for milking were brimming with whey. When they saw all this, my men begged me to let them steal some cheeses first and take them to the ship. Then, they wanted to come back, round up the lambs and kids, load them onto the ship, and sail away. It would have been much better if we had done that, but I wouldn't listen. I hoped to meet the owner himself, thinking he might offer us a gift. However, when we finally met him, my poor men realized he was a very difficult person to deal with. We lit a fire, offered some cheese to the gods, and ate the rest. Then we sat waiting for the Cyclops to return with his sheep. When he came, he carried an enormous load of dry firewood to light his supper fire. He threw it onto the cave floor with such a crash that we scrambled to hide in the deepest part of the cavern, trembling with fear. Meanwhile, he herded all the ewes and she-goats he intended to milk inside the cave. He left the males, both rams and he-goats, outside in the yard. Then he rolled a massive stone to block the cave entrance. It was so enormous that 22 strong, 4-wheeled wagons wouldn't be enough to move it from the doorway. After that, he sat down and milked his ewes and goats, one by one, then let each mother nurse her young. He curdled half the milk and put it in wicker strainers. The other half he poured into bowls to drink for his supper. When he finished his work, he lit a fire. That's when he spotted us. He said,
"Strangers, who are you? Where do you sail from? Are you traders, or are you pirates, whose hands are against everyone, and everyone's hands are against them?"
We were terrified out of our wits by his booming voice and monstrous appearance, but I managed to speak.
"We are Achaeans on our way home from Troy.
I said,
But by the will of Zeus and fierce storms, we have been blown far off course. We are the followers of Agamemnon, son of Atreus, who has gained endless fame across the world by plundering such a great city and slaying countless men. Therefore, we humbly ask you to show us hospitality and give us the gifts that guests can reasonably expect. Noble sir, fear the wrath of the heavens. We are your humble petitioners. Zeus protects all honorable travelers, for he avenges all who seek refuge and all strangers in distress."
He gave me a merciless answer.
"Stranger,
He said,
you are a fool, or you know nothing about this land. Dare you tell me to fear the gods or avoid their anger? We Cyclopes don't care about Zeus or any of your so-called blessed gods, because we are far stronger than them. I won't spare you or your companions out of any respect for Zeus, unless I feel like it. Now tell me, where did you tie up your ship when you came ashore? Is it hidden around the point, or is it right here on the coast?"
He said this to trick me, but I was too cunning to fall for such a trick, so I replied with a lie.
"Poseidon
I said,
sent my ship onto the rocks at the far end of your land and wrecked it. We were driven onto them from the open sea, but I and those with me barely escaped the jaws of death."
The cruel monster didn't answer a single word. Instead, he suddenly reached out, grabbed 2 of my men at once, and slammed them to the ground like puppies. Their brains splattered on the earth, soaking the ground with blood. Then he tore them apart and devoured them. He gobbled them down like a wild lion, flesh, bones, marrow, and guts, leaving nothing behind. We watched the horrifying sight, crying out and raising our hands to the heavens, completely helpless. But after Polyphemus filled his enormous belly with human flesh and washed it down with pure milk, he stretched out among his sheep and fell asleep. At first, I thought about drawing my sword and plunging it into his heart. But then I realized that if I did, we would all surely die. We could never move the massive stone the monster had placed in front of the door. So we stayed there, sobbing and sighing, until morning came. When the rosy-fingered Dawn, goddess of morning, appeared, Polyphemus lit his fire again, skillfully milked his goats and ewes, and then reunited each mother with her young. After finishing his chores, he grabbed 2 more of my men and began eating them for his breakfast. A short while later, he effortlessly rolled the stone away from the door and let his sheep out. Then, he instantly put the stone back in place, as easily as closing the lid on a quiver of arrows. As soon as the stone was back, he shouted,
"Shoo, shoo,"
driving the sheep up the mountain. Now, I had to devise a plan to get my revenge and reclaim my honor. Finally, I decided this plan would be the best. Polyphemus had a massive club lying near one of his sheep pens. It was made of green olive wood, cut to be used as a staff once it dried. The club was so huge, it was like the mast of a large merchant ship with 20 oars, big enough to sail the open seas. I approached the club and cut off about 6 feet of it. I gave this piece to my men and told them to smooth one end. They did as instructed, and then I sharpened the tip myself, charring it in the fire to make it even harder. After this, I hid it under the piles of dung scattered around the cave. Then, I had my men draw lots to see who would join me in driving it into the monster's eye while he slept. The lot fell to the very 4 men I would have chosen, making 5 of us in total. In the evening, the cruel monster returned with his flock. This time, he drove all the sheep inside the cave, leaving none in the yard. Perhaps it was a whim, or a god had prompted him. As soon as he put the stone back in the doorway, he sat down and skillfully milked his ewes and goats, reuniting each mother with her young. After finishing all his work, he grabbed 2 more of my men and ate them for his supper. So, I approached him, holding a bowl of dark wine made from ivy wood. I said,
Polyphemus, look here. You've eaten a lot of human flesh, so drink some of this wine. You'll see what kind of liquor we had on my ship. I brought it as an offering, hoping you'd pity me and help me on my way home. But all you do is rage and rave intolerably. You should be ashamed. How can you expect anyone to visit you again if you treat them like this?
He took the cup and drank. He was so delighted by the wine's taste that he begged for another bowl. He said,
"Please, give me more. And tell me your name right now. I want to give you a gift you'll be happy to have. We have wine in our land too, for our soil grows grapes and the sun ripens them. But this drinks like nectar and ambrosia all in one."
I gave him more wine. 3 times I filled the bowl for him, and 3 times he drained it without a thought. When I saw the wine had gone to his head, I spoke to him as cleverly as I could.
Polyphemus, if you ask my name, I will tell you. So, give me the gift you promised. My name is Nobody. My father, mother, and friends have always called me that.
But the cruel monster said,
"Then I will eat all of Nobody's comrades first, and I will eat Nobody last. This is the gift I will give you."
As soon as he finished speaking, he staggered, then fell backward, sprawling on the ground, staring up at the sky. His massive neck slumped back, and a deep sleep overcame him. Soon, he grew sick and vomited up all the wine and chunks of human flesh he had gorged on, for he was very drunk. Then, I pushed the wooden club deep into the embers to heat it until it glowed. I didn't forget to encourage my men, in case any of them lost heart. Even though it was green wood, when it was hot enough to burst into flames, I pulled it from the fire. Whether heaven filled their hearts with courage or not, my men gathered around me. We drove the sharpened end of the club into the monster's eye. Then, putting all my weight into it, I twisted it round and round. It was like 2 men using a wheel and strap to turn an auger, boring a hole in a ship's plank for as long as they wished. That's how we bored the red-hot club into his eye, twisting it continuously. Boiling blood frothed around it as we worked, and steam from his burning eyeball scalded his eyelids and eyebrows. The roots of his eye sizzled in the fire. Just as a blacksmith plunges an axe or hatchet into cold water to temper it, making a loud hiss, so too did Polyphemus's eye hiss around the olive wood club. His hideous screams echoed throughout the entire cave. We fled in terror, but he ripped the gore-covered club from his eye. Then, mad with rage and pain, he hurled it away. As he did so, he roared out to the other Cyclopes living on the bleak headlands nearby. Hearing his cries, the Cyclopes gathered from all directions around his cave and asked what was wrong. They called out,
Polyphemus, what's wrong? Why are you making such a racket, breaking the night's stillness and keeping us from sleeping? Surely nobody isn't stealing your sheep? Or is nobody trying to kill you, either by trickery or by force?
But Polyphemus roared back from inside the cave.
Nobody is killing me by trickery. Nobody is killing me by force.
They replied,
If nobody is attacking you, then you must be sick. When Zeus makes people ill, there's nothing anyone can do, so you'd better pray to your father, Poseidon.
They left, and I laughed to myself at the success of my clever trick. But the Cyclops, groaning and writhing in agony, felt around with his hands until he found the stone blocking the door and moved it aside. Then he sat in the doorway, stretching his hands out to catch anyone trying to leave with the sheep. He thought I might be foolish enough to try that. I kept racking my brain, trying to figure out the best way to save my own life and those of my companions. Our lives depended on it, so I thought and thought. The danger was immense. Finally, I decided this plan would be the best. The male sheep were large and had heavy black fleeces. I quietly tied the sheep together in threes, using some of the vines the wicked monster used to sleep on. One man would hide under the middle sheep, with 2 sheep on either side covering him. So, each man was assigned 3 sheep. For myself, I chose a ram finer than all the others. I grabbed its back, hid myself in the thick wool under its belly. I clung stubbornly to its fleece, face upwards, holding on tight the whole time. So, we waited in immense fear for morning to come. When Eos, the rosy-fingered goddess of dawn, appeared, the male sheep rushed out to graze. The ewes, their udders swollen to bursting, stayed in the pens, bleeding and waiting to be milked. But their master, Polyphemus, despite all his pain, felt the backs of all the sheep as they stood upright. He wasn't sharp enough to realize that men were hidden beneath their bellies. Finally, as the ram, heavy with its thick fleece and my cunning self hidden beneath, was about to leave, Polyphemus grabbed it and said,
My good ram, why are you the last to leave my cave this morning? You're never one to let the ewes go before you. You always led the flock, whether to flowery meadows or bubbling springs, and you were always the first to return home at night. But now you lag behind everyone. Is it because you know your master has lost his eye, and you're sorry that that wicked nobody and his terrible crew got me drunk and blinded me? But I will surely take his life yet. If only you could understand and speak, you would tell me where that wretched man is hiding. Then I would smash his brains on the ground until they splattered all over the cave. That way, I would get some satisfaction for the harm this good-for-nothing nobody has done to me.
As he spoke, he drove the ram outside. Once we were a little way from the cave and the pens, I first slipped out from under the ram's belly, then freed my comrades. The sheep were very fat, and by constantly guiding them in the right direction, we managed to drive them down to the ship. The crew rejoiced greatly at seeing those of us who had escaped death, but they wept for our other comrades killed by the Cyclops. However, I nodded and frowned, signaling them to stop their crying. I ordered them to load all the sheep onto the ship at once and set out to sea. They boarded, took their places, and struck the gray sea with their oars. When we were far enough that my voice would carry, I began to taunt the Cyclops. I shouted,
Cyclops, you should have known what kind of man you were dealing with before you ate my comrades in your cave. You wretch, eating visitors in your own home? You should have known your sin would catch up to you. Now Zeus and the other gods have punished you.
He grew more and more furious as he heard me. He tore the top off a high mountain and flung it right in front of my ship. It barely missed the end of the rudder. The sea quaked as the rock crashed into it, and the wave it created pushed us back towards the mainland, forcing us toward the shore. But I grabbed a long pole and pushed the ship away. I nodded, signaling my men to row for their lives. They then rowed with all their might. When we had gone twice as far as before, I wanted to taunt the Cyclops again. But my men begged and pleaded with me to keep quiet. They cried out,
"Please, don't be crazy enough to provoke this savage creature any further. He already threw one rock at us that drove us back to the mainland, and we thought we were dead then. If he had heard any more voices then, he would have smashed our heads and our ship's hull into jelly with the jagged rocks he would have hurled at us. He can throw rocks a long, long way."
but I wouldn't listen to them. In my rage, I shouted to him,
Cyclops, if anyone asks who put out your eye and ruined your sight, tell them it was Odysseus, son of Laertes, the valiant warrior who lives in Ithaca.
Polyphemus groaned and cried out,
"Oh no! The old prophecy about me is actually coming true. There once was a brave, giant prophet here, Telemus, son of Eurymus. He was an excellent seer who made prophecies for the Cyclopes until he grew old. He told me that one day this would happen, and I would lose my eye to Odysseus. I always expected someone grand and super strong, but instead, it's just a pathetic weakling who blinded me by taking advantage of me when I was drunk. Odysseus, come here. I'll give you gifts of hospitality, and I'll ask Poseidon to help you on your journey. Poseidon is my father, after all. If he wishes, he can heal me. No one else, God or human, can do that."
Then I said,
I wish I could be as sure of killing you right now and sending you to Hades' house, as I am sure that Poseidon can't heal your eye.
Polyphemus lifted his hands to the sky and prayed,
"Great Poseidon, if I am truly your son, then let Odysseus never return home alive. But if he must reach his friends eventually, let him do so late and in a terrible state, after losing all his men. Let him arrive home on another ship and find only suffering in his house."
As Polyphemus prayed, Poseidon heard his plea. Then, the Cyclops picked up a rock much larger than the first one. He swung it over his head and hurled it with immense power. The rock landed just in front of our ship, barely missing the end of the rudder. When the rock hit the sea, the water churned violently. The powerful wave it created pushed our ship further towards the island's shore. Finally, we reached the island where we had left our other ships. Our comrades were waiting anxiously, mourning us and fearing the worst. We pulled our ship onto the sandy beach and disembarked. We also brought the Cyclops sheep ashore and divided them fairly among everyone, so no one had reason to complain. My companions agreed that I should have the ram as a special share. So, on the beach, I sacrificed the ram and burned its thigh bones as an offering to Zeus, the Lord of all. But Zeus did not accept my sacrifice. Instead, he was already planning how to destroy both my ships and my comrades. We spent the entire day feasting on meat and wine until the sun went down. When darkness fell, we camped on the beach. As rosy-fingered Dawn, the goddess of morning, appeared, I ordered my men to board the ships and untie the ropes. Each man took his place and rowed hard across the gray sea. We carried the sorrow of losing our comrades in our hearts, but we also felt relief at escaping death, and so we continued our journey. Book 10. Aeolus, the Laestrygonians, Circe. From there, we sailed to the island of Aeolus. He was the son of Hippotas, a favorite of the immortal gods. The island was like a floating fortress, surrounded by an iron wall. Aeolus had 6 strong sons and 6 daughters. He married them to each other. They all lived together with their parents, enjoying endless feasts and every luxury imaginable. All day long, the scent of roasting meats filled the air, making the whole house hum with activity. At night, they slept in their comfortable beds, each with their spouse. This was the home of the people we had now encountered. Aeolus treated me with great hospitality for a whole month. He constantly asked about the Trojan War, the Argive fleet, and the Achaeans' journey home. I told him every detail. When it was time to leave, I asked him to help us on our way. He didn't hesitate. He gave me a sturdy oxhide bag, filled with all the wild, roaring winds. Zeus had made him the master of the winds, so he could unleash or calm them as he pleased. He placed the bag on our ship and tied its opening tightly with a silver thread, so not even a whisper of a breeze could escape. Only the west wind, which would guide us home, was allowed to blow freely. But all his efforts were in vain. We were lost because of our own foolishness. We sailed for 9 days and 9 nights. On the 10th day, our homeland finally appeared on the horizon. We were so close we could even see the stubble fires burning in the fields. I was utterly exhausted and fell into a light sleep. I hadn't let go of the rudder for a moment, eager to reach home faster. While I slept, my crew began to whisper among themselves. They believed the bag Aeolus gave me was full of gold and silver. One sailor turned to his neighbor and said,
"Look at this man. He's welcomed everywhere he goes and makes friends so easily. Just look at all the valuable treasures he's bringing home from Troy. We've traveled just as far, but we're returning empty-handed. And now Aeolus has given him even more. Come on, let's open that bag and see what's inside, how much gold and silver it holds."
Their whispers turned into action, and evil advice won out over reason. They untied the bag, and the winds burst out, howling furiously and unleashing a terrible storm. The storm swept us, weeping, far out to sea, away from our homeland. I woke up, torn between throwing myself into the ocean or enduring this new disaster. But I chose to bear it. I huddled in the ship, while my men cried out in despair as the fierce winds drove our fleet back to Aeolus's island. When we reached the island, we landed to get water and ate our meal by the ships. Right after dinner, I took a herald and one of my men and went straight to Aeolus's house. I found him feasting with his wife and family. We sat down on the doorstep, like beggars seeking help. They were shocked to see us.
"Odysseus,"
they exclaimed,
"what brings you back here? What god has tormented you? We went to great lengths to help you on your way home to Ithaca, or wherever you wish to go."
I answered them, my heart heavy with sorrow.
My men ruined me, along with that cruel sleep. Friends, please fix this misfortune. You can do it if you wish.
I pleaded as earnestly as I could, but they remained silent. Finally, their father, Aeolus, spoke.
"You most wretched of men, get out of this island at once. I will never help someone hated by the gods. Go. You have come here as one despised by heaven."
With those harsh words, he drove me, heartbroken, from his door. Heartbroken, we set sail again. With no wind to help us, my men grew exhausted from endless, fruitless rowing. For 6 days and nights, we struggled onward. On the 7th day, we reached Telepolis, the rocky fortress of Lamos, the city of the Laestrygonians. It was a strange place where the sun's rising and setting were so long or short that a shepherd driving in his flock would greet another driving his out. In that land, if you could stay awake, you could earn double wages, working as both a cattle herder and a shepherd, because they worked almost as much by night as by day. When we reached the harbor, we found a bay enclosed by steep cliffs, with a narrow entrance between 2 headlands. My captains steered all their ships inside, mooring them close together, because the bay was always perfectly calm, without a single breath of wind. I, however, kept my own ship outside, tying it to a rock at the very tip of the headland. Then I climbed a tall rock to scout the area. I saw no signs of people or animals, only a faint wisp of smoke rising from the ground. So, I sent 2 of my men and an attendant to find out what kind of people lived there. My men went ashore and followed a flat road that led from the mountains to the town, where people carried firewood. Soon, they met a young woman who was fetching water. She was the daughter of Antiphates, a Laestrygonian. She was on her way to the Artatia fountain, where the townspeople drew their water. My men approached her and asked about the king of the land and his people. She led them to her father's house. But when they arrived, they were horrified to see Antiphates' wife, a giantess as enormous as a mountain. The giantess immediately called her husband, Antiphates, from the assembly place. As soon as he appeared, Antiphates began to kill my men. He snatched one up and devoured him on the spot for his dinner. The other 2 men ran back to the ships as fast as they could. But Antiphates shouted after them, and thousands of strong Laestrygonians appeared from everywhere. They were not men, but terrifying monsters. They hurled enormous rocks at us from the cliffs, as if they were mere pebbles. I heard the horrifying sound of ships crashing into each other and the death cries of my men. The Lestrygonians speared them like fish, carrying them home to eat. While they were slaughtering my men in the harbor, I drew my sword and cut the cable of my own ship. I shouted to my crew to row with all their might if they didn't want to suffer the same fate. They rowed for their lives. We were incredibly grateful when we reached the open sea, out of reach of the rocks they were throwing. Not a single other ship remained. Grieving for our lost comrades, yet relieved to have escaped death, we continued our voyage. We arrived at the island of Aea, home to the great and cunning goddess Circe. Circe was the sister of the sorcerer Eets, both children of the sun god, and Perse, daughter of Oceanus. Some god guided us there, and we silently brought our ship into a safe harbor. Exhausted in body and mind, we stayed there for 2 days and 2 nights. On the morning of the 3rd day, I took my spear and sword and left the ship to scout, hoping to find signs of people or hear voices. Climbing to the top of a high lookout point, I saw smoke rising from Circe's house in the middle of a dense forest. Seeing the smoke, I hesitated, wondering if I should go investigate immediately. But I decided it was best to return to the ship, feed my men, and send some of them instead of going myself. As I was almost back to the ship, a god, pitying my loneliness, sent a magnificent antlered stag right into my path. It was coming down from its forest pasture to drink from the river, driven by the sun's heat. As it passed, I struck it in the middle of its back. The bronze spearhead pierced clean through its body, and it groaned in the dust before dying. I placed my foot on the stag, pulled my spear from the wound, and set it aside. Then I gathered rough grass and reeds, twisting them into a strong rope about a fathom long. With this, I tied the noble creature's 4 feet together. The stag was too large for me to carry on my shoulder with one hand, so I slung it around my neck and walked back to the ship, leaning on my spear. I dropped the stag in front of the ship and called my men, encouraging each one of them.
Friends,
I said,
look here. We won't die before our time after all. And as long as we have food and drink on board, we won't starve.
At my words, they uncovered their heads on the seashore and gazed at the stag with admiration, for it was truly a splendid animal. After they had admired it enough, they washed their hands and began to cook it for dinner. We spent the entire day eating and drinking our fill until sunset. When the sun went down and darkness fell, we camped on the seashore. As rosy-fingered dawn, child of morning, appeared, I called a council and spoke.
Friends,
I said,
we are in serious trouble. Listen to me. We have no idea where the sun rises or sets, so we don't even know east from west. I can't see a way out of this, but we must find one.
I continued.
We are definitely on an island. This morning, I climbed as high as I could and saw the sea stretching all around us to the horizon. The island lies low, but towards the center, I saw smoke rising from a thick forest.
My words made their hearts sink. They remembered the terrible things that had happened with Antiphates the Lestrygonian and the cruel monster Polyphemus. They wept bitterly in despair, but crying wouldn't help. So, I divided them into 2 groups, assigning a captain to each. I put one group under Eurylochus' command and led the other myself. We cast lots in a helmet, and the lot fell to Eurylochus. So, he set off with his 22 men. They wept as they left, and we who remained behind also wept. When they reached Circe's house, they found it built of finely cut stones, standing in the middle of the forest, visible from afar. Wild mountain wolves and lions roamed around it. These were poor, bewitched creatures that Circe had tamed with her magic and drugs, forcing them into submission. The animals didn't attack my men. Instead, they wagged their huge tails, fawned over them, and rubbed their noses affectionately. It was like hunting dogs greeting their master returning from dinner, knowing he'll bring them something. But my men were terrified by these strange beasts. Soon, they reached the gates of the goddess's house. As they stood there, they heard Circe inside, singing beautifully as she worked at her loom. The fabric she wove was so delicate, soft, and dazzling in color that only a goddess could have made it. Then Polites, whom I valued and trusted more than any other of my men, spoke.
Someone inside is working at a loom and singing so beautifully. The whole house echoes with her voice. Let's call her and find out if she's a woman or a goddess.
When they called, Circe came down, opened the door, and invited them in. My men, suspecting no harm, followed her inside. Only Eurylochus, sensing trouble, stayed outside. Circe led them into her house, seated them on benches and chairs, and offered them a meal mixed with cheese, honey, grain, and Pramnian wine. But she had secretly added wicked poisons to make them forget their homes. As soon as they drank it, Circe waved her wand, transforming them into pigs and herding them into her pigsties. They became pigs completely, from head to hair, grunting just like swine. Yet, astonishingly, their minds remained human, and they remembered everything vividly. So, they were trapped in the pigsties, grunting, while Circe threw them acorns and beech nuts, the food of pigs. Meanwhile, Eurylochus rushed back to tell me about our comrade's tragic fate. He was so overwhelmed with despair that he tried to speak, but couldn't find the words. His eyes filled with tears, and he could only sob and sigh. Finally, we pressed him until he managed to tell us what had happened to the others. He said,
"We went through the forest just as you told us. In the middle of it, there was a beautiful stone house, easy to spot from a distance. Inside, we found a woman, perhaps even a goddess, sitting at her loom and singing a lovely song. My men called out to her, and she immediately came down, opened the door, and invited us in. The others followed her inside without a second thought, but I stayed put, sensing a trap. From that moment on, I never saw them again. Not a single one came out, no matter how long I waited."
I slung my bronze sword over my shoulder and grabbed my bow. Then I told Eurylochus to come back with me and show me the way. But he grabbed me with both hands and pleaded,
"Captain, please don't force me to go with you. I'll stay here. You won't bring any of them back, and you won't even return alive yourself. It's better if the few of us left try to escape and save our lives."
I replied,
Then you stay here on the ship, eating and drinking. But I must go. I am bound by duty.
With that, I left the ship and headed inland. As I passed through the enchanted grove and neared the great house of the sorceress Circe, I met Hermes. He carried a golden wand and was disguised as a young man, in the prime of his youth and beauty, with the first down just appearing on his face. He approached me, took my hand, and said,
"My poor, unfortunate man, where are you going alone over this mountaintop, without knowing the way? Your men are trapped in Circe's pigsties, like wild boars in their dens. You surely don't think you can set them free, do you? Honestly, you'll never get back, you'll end up staying there with the rest of them. But don't worry. I will protect you and help you out of this trouble. Take this herb. It has great power, so keep it with you when you go to Circe's house. It will be a charm to protect you from all harm. I will also tell you about all the wicked magic Circe will try to use on you. She will mix a drink for you, and she will drug the food she uses to make it. But she won't be able to enchant you, because the power of the herb I give you will stop her spells from working. Here's what you must do: when Circe strikes you with her wand, draw your sword and rush at her as if you mean to kill her. She will be frightened then and will want you to go to bed with her. You must not flat out refuse her, because you want her to free your companions and to keep yourself safe. But you must make her swear solemnly by all the sacred gods that she will not plot any further harm against you. Otherwise, she will weaken you and make you useless."
As he spoke, he pulled the herb from the ground and showed me what it looked like. Its root was black, and its flower was as white as milk. The gods call this herb moly. Mortal men cannot uproot it, but the gods can do anything they wish. Hermes then returned to high Olympus, flying over the wooded island. But I continued on to Circe's house, my heart heavy with worry as I walked. When I reached the gates, I stood there and called out to the goddess. As soon as she heard me, she came down, opened the door, and invited me in. I followed her inside, my mind troubled. She seated me on a richly decorated chair inlaid with silver, with a footstool beneath my feet. She mixed a drink in a golden goblet for me, but she had drugged it, intending to harm me. When she gave it to me, I drank it, but it didn't enchant me. Then she struck me with her wand.
Now, off to the pigsty with you.
She cried.
Make your lair with the rest of them.
But I rushed at her with my sword drawn as if to kill her. She screamed and fell, clutching my knees, pleading.
Who are you, and where do you come from? From what land and people have you arrived? How is it that my magic has no power over you? No man has ever been able to withstand even a taste of the herb I gave you, yet you are immune to spells. Surely you are none other than the brave hero Odysseus, whom Hermes always said would come here someday with his ship on his way home from Troy. So be it then. Sheath your sword, and let us go to bed together, so we may become friends and trust each other.
I replied.
Circe, how can you expect me to be friendly with you when you've just turned all my men into pigs? And now that you have me here, you're asking me to go to bed with you, surely intending to harm me. You'll weaken me and make me useless. I will certainly not agree to go to bed with you unless you first swear a solemn oath that you will plot no further harm against me.
She immediately swore as I had told her. Once she had completed her oath, I went to bed with her. Meanwhile, Circe's four handmaidens, nymphs born from the groves, fountains, and sacred waters flowing into the sea, began their work. One spread a beautiful purple cloth over a seat and laid a carpet beneath it. Another brought silver tables next to the seats and set them with golden baskets. A third mixed sweet wine with water in a silver bowl and placed golden cups on the tables. The fourth brought water and set a large cauldron to boil over a fire she had lit. When the water in the cauldron was boiling, she poured in cold water until it was just the right temperature for me. Then she seated me in a bath and began washing my head and shoulders from the cauldron to wash away the weariness and stiffness from my limbs. After she had finished washing and anointing me with oil, she dressed me in a fine cloak and shirt and led me to a richly decorated seat inlaid with silver, with a footstool beneath my feet. A maidservant then brought water in a beautiful golden pitcher and poured it into a silver basin for me to wash my hands. She also drew a clean table beside me. Another servant brought bread and offered me many other foods from the house. Circe urged me to eat, but I would not. I sat there, ignoring the food before me, still gloomy and suspicious. When Circe saw me sitting there, not eating and deep in sorrow, she came to me and said,
Odysseus, why do you sit there like a mute, gnawing at your own heart, refusing both food and drink? Are you still suspicious of me? You shouldn't be, for I have already sworn a solemn oath that I will not harm you.
I replied,
Circe, no man with any sense of what is right can think of eating or drinking in your house until you have set his friends free and let him see them. If you want me to eat and drink, you must free my men and bring them to me so I can see them with my own eyes.
As soon as I finished speaking, Circe took her wand, went straight through the courtyard, and opened the pigsty doors. My men came out, grunting like fat hogs, and stood looking at her. Circe walked among them, anointing each with a second drug. All the bristles that the first drug had given them fell off, and they turned back into men. They were younger than before, much taller, and better looking. They recognized me at once, each seizing my hand and weeping for joy until the whole house was filled with their joyful shouts. Even Circe felt pity for them. She came to me and said,
Odysseus, noble son of Laertes, go back at once to the sea where you left your ship. First, pull it onto the land. Then, hide all your ship's gear and property in a cave, and come back here with your men.
I agreed to Circe's words, so I returned to the seashore. There, I found the men still at the ship, weeping and wailing pitifully. When they saw me, the silly, blubbering fellows began frisking and running around me. It was like calves, after feeding all day, seeing their mother cows return to be milked, and joyfully leaping and lowing. Their cries echoed through the homestead. They seemed as glad to see me as if they had safely returned to their own rugged Ithaca, where they were born and raised. The affectionate men said,
Captain, we are as glad to see you back as if we had safely returned home to Ithaca. But please, tell us all about the fate of our comrades.
I spoke to them comfortingly and said,
We must pull our ship onto the land and hide its gear and all our property in a cave. Then all of you come with me as fast as you can to Circe's house. where you will find your comrades enjoying abundant food and drink.
The men would have come with me at once, but Eurylochus tried to hold them back. He said,
Alas, poor wretches that we are! What will become of us? Don't rush to your ruin by going to Circe's house. She will turn us all into pigs, wolves, or lions, and we'll have to guard her house. Remember how the Cyclops treated us when our comrades went inside his cave, with Odysseus among them. It was all because of Odysseus's sheer folly that those men lost their lives.
When I heard him, I was torn, wondering whether to draw the sharp blade hanging by my sturdy thigh and cut off his head, even though he was a close relative of mine. But the men spoke up for him. They said,
Sir, if it's all right, let this fellow stay here and look after the ship. The rest of us will go with you to Circe's house.
With that, we all headed inland. Eurylochus didn't stay behind after all. He came along too, frightened by the severe scolding I had given him. Meanwhile, Circe had seen to it that the men who had arrived earlier were washed and anointed with olive oil. She had also given them woolen cloaks and shirts. When we arrived, we found them all comfortably having dinner in her house. As soon as the men saw each other face to face and recognized one another, they wept for joy and cried aloud until the whole palace rang again. Then Circe came up to me and said,
Odysseus, noble son of Laertes, tell your men to stop crying. I know how much all of you have suffered at sea, and how hard you have fared among cruel savages on the mainland. But that is over now, so stay here, eat, and drink until you are once more as strong and hearty in body and mind as you were when you left Ithaca. For now, you are weakened both in body and mind, constantly thinking of the hardships you've suffered during your travels, so there's no joy left in you.
Circe finished speaking, and we readily agreed. We spent a whole year with Circe, feasting on endless meat and wine. But as the moons waxed and waned, a year passed. The long days returned. My men pulled me aside and spoke to me.
Captain,
They urged,
it's time to think about heading home. That is, if we're ever going to see our houses and homeland again.
I agreed with my men. We spent the entire day, until sunset, eating and drinking our fill. When the sun finally set and darkness fell, my men settled down in the covered halls to sleep. But I went to bed with Circe, and I took her by the knees, begging her. The goddess listened carefully.
Circe,
I said,
please keep your promise to help me on my journey home. My men and I are desperate to return. They constantly pester me with complaints the moment your back is turned.
The goddess replied,
Odysseus, noble son of Laertes, you and your men don't have to stay here any longer if you don't wish to. But before you can sail home, there's another journey you absolutely must take. You must go to the house of Hades and the fearsome Persephone, to seek advice from the ghost of the blind Theban prophet, Tiresias. His mind remains sharp and clear, even in death. Persephone granted him alone full understanding in the underworld, while the other spirits simply drift aimlessly.
I was completely stunned when I heard this. I sat up in bed and wept, wishing I could just die and never see the light of day again. But soon, exhausted from crying and tossing, I managed to speak.
Who on earth will guide me on this journey? The house of Hades is a place no ship can reach.
You won't need a guide.
She answered,
Just raise your mast and unfurl your white sails. Sit still, and the north wind will carry you there all by itself. Once your ship crosses the vast waters of Oceanus, you'll reach the fertile land of Persephone, with its groves of tall poplars and willows that drop their fruit too early. Beach your ship there on the shore of Oceanus, and head straight for Hades' dark dwelling. You'll find it near where the rivers Pyriphlegethon and Cocytus flow into the Acheron. Cocytus, by the way, is a branch of the river Styx. Right where those two roaring rivers merge, you'll see a rock. When you arrive at that spot, just as I'm telling you now, dig a trench about a cubit long, wide, and deep. As an offering to all the dead, first pour in a mixture of honey and milk, then wine, and thirdly, water. Sprinkle white barley meal over it all. You must also offer many prayers to the poor, weak spirits. Promise them that when you return to Ithaca, you'll sacrifice your best barren heifer to them, and load the pyre with many good things. Specifically, you must promise Tiresias a black sheep, the finest in all your flocks, just for him. After you've pleaded with the spirits through your prayers, sacrifice a ram and a black ewe, bowing their heads towards Erebus. But you yourself must turn away from them, as if you're facing the river. Then, countless ghosts of the dead will swarm towards you. Tell your men to skin the 2 sheep you've just killed and offer them as a burnt sacrifice, praying to Hades and Persephone. Then, draw your sword and sit there, blocking any other poor spirit from coming near the spilled blood until Tiresias has answered your questions. The prophet will soon come to you and tell you everything about your journey, what steps you must take, and how to sail the sea to finally reach your home.
By the time she finished speaking, dawn was already breaking. She dressed me in my shirt and cloak. For herself, she draped a beautiful, light silk fabric over her shoulders, cinched her waist with a golden girdle, and covered her head with a mantle. Then, I went through the house, speaking kindly to each of my men.
There's no more time for sleeping here.
I told them.
We must leave. Circe has told me everything we need to know.
And they did exactly as I commanded. However, we didn't manage to leave without a bit of bad luck. Among us was a young man named Elpenor, who wasn't particularly known for his wisdom or courage. He'd gotten drunk and was sleeping off his liquor on the cool rooftop, away from the others. When he heard the men bustling about, he suddenly jumped up. But he completely forgot about the main staircase and tumbled right off the roof, breaking his neck. His soul descended straight to the house of Hades. After I gathered all the men, I told them.
You might think we're heading straight home now, but Circe explained that instead, we must go to the house of Hades and Persephone to seek advice from the ghost of the Theban prophet, Tiresias.
The men were absolutely heartbroken when they heard my words. They threw themselves onto the ground, groaning and tearing at their hair. But all their weeping didn't change a thing. As we reached the seashore, still weeping and lamenting our fate, Circe arrived with a ram and a ewe. We tied them securely beside the ship. She moved through our midst without us even noticing. For who can truly see the comings and goings of a god, unless the god wishes to reveal themselves?